2020 was a challenging year overall for the insurance industry as the pandemic showed many that the incumbent players really were not prepared and really lagging behind in digitization. But that wasn't the case for Lemonade, a newcomer to the business who was making waves with its insurance offerings by using artificial intelligence, behavioral economics, and user-friendly experiences and designs. With us now to discuss is Daniel Schreiber, the CEO of Lemonade. Daniel, Happy New Year!
Same to you and yours. Thank you so much.
Despite 2020 overall, the company Lemonade itself has had an amazing 2020, Let's just talk about the milestone that the company achieved at the end of the year, crossing 1 million active customers. You hit that milestone faster than any of the traditional insurers that we're familiar with. So what was really fueling that growth?
Yeah, it was an absolute thrill. And we did it in just over 4 years. And it usually takes 20 to 50 years for some of the biggest and brightest names in the industry. So very exciting for us. Really, it's all about delighting consumers. So we've built the company from the very get-go on this idea that if you do something that is really compelling to consumers, you put the consumers at the center, not the regulator, not the policy, not even the technology, the consumer. You can create a feedback loop where consumers love the product, tell their friends, they come along, and you start getting this tremendous flywheel spinning where more customers also gets you more data. More data allows you to price the product more effectively, passing on savings to consumers. A lot of our policies can be 50% cheaper than incumbent policies. Claims get paid in as little as 3 seconds. Buying it is near on instantaneous. You put all that together and you can start seeing some really rapid growth.
Now, I wonder, given the shutdowns that occurred at various points last year, and as you had more rollouts in Europe, for example, and throughout the US, what were some of the challenges that you were able to overcome along the way?
Well, 2020 was challenging and in the event very good for Lemonade, but that was not self-evident. As March ticked over and as we were standing there in April and looking at the pandemic that crushed the markets and put so much risk in every business. So to start with, back in March, we shut down all of our offices. We still haven't returned to our offices. We've got offices in multiple locations in the US, in Europe, in Israel. And what we found was that actually, as so many companies have found, working from home is okay. Everything that we did from day one has been cloud-based. So because we were international from day one, everybody's been able to work remotely. We didn't discover Zoom as part of COVID, nor Slack. We've been using those kinds of technology since day one. So it actually ended up being a fairly seamless transition from one day to the next. And in fact, a majority of our employees have joined Lemonade since the lockdown began. So for us, a majority of our team members have never met a fellow person in person, have never been to any of our locations, which is pretty extraordinary. And again, looking back in March, we did not think that that would be possible. But perhaps more importantly, we've been able to service our customers entirely digitally. So we're never broker-based. We've always got bots that service customers. Social distancing doesn't apply to the bot that you buy a policy from or who pays your claim. So we've been able to see a lot of the fundamentals of our business, if anything, get accelerated as people opt out of the in-person offerings of some of the incumbent to a purely virtual or digital distribution model.
Extraordinary was the word that I was also thinking of when you described your hiring for last year and having so much now of your hiring done during a remote period of time. I want to get back to the hiring and, the idea of brokers a little bit later on, but I want to talk about some of the other things that you have around you as a protective moat. AI, of course, being the cornerstone of your products. This, of course, making it more efficient as the insurer, but how is that also maybe an advantage for capturing a younger demographic?
Well, people don't like insurance. Let's start with that. It tends to be a very incomprehensible process. When you're sitting in front of the agent or the broker, you have some understanding of what they're explaining, but the policy itself is long and convoluted. And in retrospect, you're not even sure who your insurance company is. You're certainly not sure what they have covered you for. when you do stuff digitally, the experience is transformed. So you don't have to um, mess around with faxes, which is still how a lot of paperwork gets done. There is no paperwork to get done. Buying a policy at Lemonade is a playful chat with a bot. It takes, on average, 90 seconds to buy a policy at Lemonade. So you're talking about something that is just easy. You can't do that in the old-fashioned way of doing things. So you start off just with a transformed experience, and only technology can bring that level of accessibility and instantaneous experience. So you could be sitting at home in your pajamas on lockdown, or just because you're in your pajamas anyway, and you can buy a policy, and you can do that in a playful interaction that lasts a few seconds. And then when you're making a claim, it's equally easy. So you just hold the phone in front of you, you open the app, and you start answering a couple of questions. Oh, what happened? Oh, my laptop was stolen. Where were you? How much did it cost? And then you hit the record button and you just talk into the handset, and you talk about what happened. You just say, oh, I was at the coffee shop and somebody stole my laptop. And that's all you have to do. Now, that kind of an experience appeals to everybody. Nobody wants to go through the rigmarole of working with agents and being told that your call is important and will be answered in the order in which it's received. Nobody enjoys that. But I think for younger consumers who are brought up with a mobile phone in their hand, it's really unacceptable to do business any other way. So for them, it's even more intuitive and automatic. Although we have customers of all age groups, we do find that we skew young. So about 75% of our customers are under the age of 35, and about 90% of them are first-time buyers of insurance. So we do see dynamics that are very different to the rest of the industry in that respect.
Right. And you also, in the next couple of months, next 90 days, you're planning to test life insurance. I'm wondering how you communicate the value of insurance to a generation that, frankly, is less financially secure than their parents. I mean, the millennial generation, and even younger now, especially now with pandemic disrupting and changing up people's plans for employment. What is the communication message to these demographics, to these populations, for why insurance is important?
I think people understand why insurance is important. I think the idea that bad things can happen and you want to be covered for them is something that is not a complex message, and certainly not beyond the reach of young consumers today. Everybody gets that. What we found to date has been, though, there have been impediments to getting the insurance. So partly it's regarded as an awful process. Secondly, I don't trust my insurance company. I don't actually think they're going to pay me when I make a claim, and why should I bother if I'm just going to pay them every month and I'm never going to get paid? That's not really true. Insurance companies are better than that, but that is the perception, and that in itself is an impediment to buying insurance. So I think what we've tried to do is to address some of those obstacles, and we've ended up with a product that has three things that differentiate it from the historical way of doing insurance, if you like. The first one is value. So first-time buyers of insurance, young consumers buying insurance, save about 50%, 50% when they buy a renter's policy from Lemonade instead of from one of the incumbents. So that's a big deal. And you start with a price of, say, $5, $6, you're already in the impulse buy kind of territory of, oh, I knew I should get insurance. There's no longer any hassle, and I can do it for just a few bucks. So you start removing barriers to adoption. Which brings me to the second one, which is the experience, which we spoke about, which is if it's playful and easy and fun and your friends told you to do it and you give it a try, and before you know it, you're already at the point of paying for the policy. You've understood everything. There'd be no jargon thrown at you. It's been done from the comfort of your phone. And the third one, which we haven't really spoken about, is values. So people are reticent to purchase insurance because of a big, deep distrust that plagues the whole industry, where the insurance company doesn't trust me, to be honest. They treat me like a criminal when I make a claim. And I don't trust them either. You've got this tit for tat of distrust that just spirals onwards and downwards to the level that there's massive embellishment of claims, insurance companies that treat customers as criminals, but oftentimes we are criminals and we feel like we need to embellish our claims to get what we deserve. A lot of what Lemonade is predicated upon is rethinking some of the fundamental business model of insurance. How do we change all of that And what we did at Lemonade is we changed the business model in a few important ways, but one of them is we established Lemonade as a B Corp, as a public benefit corporation, where charitable giving is part of the business model in a way that keeps me honest and keeps you honest. Because what we basically say is that when you pay us premiums, we're going to retain 25 cents on the dollar as our money to manage our company and hopefully make a profit. And that's what we're going to keep. And the other 75% are going to go to paying your claims. Now, we never know if that's going to be enough or not enough because there's good years and there's bad years. But we tell you right now that if there's money left over at the end of the year, it's going to go to a charity of your choosing. Now, think about how that changes everything. A, it means that I have no incentive to deny or delay your claim because I'm not going to keep that money anyway. That money is going to go to a charity. If there's money left over, I don't take more money as a result of it. So I'm going to be much more inclined to pay your claims and pay them quickly. And we do. We pay about a third of our claims within 3 seconds of them being made. Because once I have no incentive to deny or delay your claim, my incentives flip. My incentive is to pay it as quickly as possible. So you'll get a great experience. You'll be a customer for life. You'll tell your friends. But you might also find that it changes your psychology, right? So you might start thinking twice about embellishing a claim if you think that in so doing, you wouldn't be sticking it to the man, to the nameless, faceless behemoth with whom you have a conflicted relationship. You would be hurting a charity that you really care about. So you change a bilateral conflicted relationship into a trilateral relationship with charities in the room with us, keeping me honest, keeping you honest, and transforming the relationship into a virtuous cycle of increasing trust. So that combination of values, value, and experience is really what gets us the consumer adoption that you've seen.
So the accountability on both ends, where the transparency, it sounds like, is what holds you accountable to the customers, and with the charities that they select is how they keep themselves accountable to something that they might have felt in the past they wanted to do to stick it to the man. I'm wondering, overall, the lifetime of the products and the company, how much have you paid out to these charities?
We paid out, we do it once a year, and we paid out just over $1 million this past year. And it ranges, it depends on the results every year, but it's ranged between about 1.5% and 10% of our premiums at the high end. But I think it probably on most years, our modeling suggests it will settle in the low single digits of our premiums. If you look at the Fortune 100, much more established and profitable companies than we are, the percentage of their sales that goes to charity tends to be a tenth or more often a hundredth of what we're giving. So on a percentage basis, it's an order of magnitude or two orders of magnitude more than the best and the richest companies in America give today.
Right, and it's not really even a fair comparison because the giving part is built into the products.
It is, and it's really saying that we think of it as enlightened self-interest. We're not just
Mm-hmm.
giving a charity. What we're really trying to do is make the charities partners in solving a fundamental business problem. And the fundamental business problem is you and I are plagued by a distrustful relationship in the traditional model. Whereas when we bring a charity into the room, it keeps me honest, it keeps you honest, and it changes the very nature of the interaction. And we move from a distrustful relationship into one imbued with values, imbued with meaning. And that's how great brands are built. So while we are giving a lot of money to charity, we find that it's money well spent in solving a customer pain point and an industry pain point. So we feel very, very good about it.
What about for the long run? I mean, investors are looking at this as maybe a lost opportunity for them. How do you sell that idea? How have investors responded to this premise?
Yeah, so I've never been apologetical to investors about our charitable give back because I think it's accretive. I think it's value creating as a business model. And we did it from day one. So all of our investors have always known that this is part of our business model. We talk about it with great pride. So nobody's surprised by it. But it is an important question because if we were just taking investors' money and giving it to charity, that would not be something to be proud of. There's nothing charitable about me giving somebody else's money away. But if we build charitable giving into the fundamental business model in a way that is solving a business problem, Embellishing claims fraud in insurance in America costs something like $40 billion a year. I think that distrust is the most expensive and intransient problem that plagues the insurance industry. So we're taking head on a fundamental problem in the industry, and this is a big part of what differentiates Lemonade and has facilitated our rapid growth and our low cost of adoption and our high loyalty rates that we're enjoying from our customers. So we don't see this as doing something at the expense of our shareholders at all. Very early on, as we were founding the company, I reached out to some Nobel laureates, one Nobel laureate in behavioral economics and another Nobel laureate in game theory, to try to understand what it is about insurance that makes people so distrustful of insurance. Insurance at a fundamental level, you'd have thought, should be the most loved sector. It's about a community of people pooling resources to help the weakest members in the hour of need. That is the dictionary definition of a social good. And yet nobody thinks of insurance that way. And it was just fascinating to me and to my co-founder as to why is that? And we ended up determining that the problem isn't the players. This isn't a question of my moral fiber being any superior to anybody else in this sector. The problem is the game. And this really is game theory kind of stuff. The problem is the game. The game has created a conflicted relationship. So trying to solve for that, to re-architect the fundamental building blocks of the sector is really what Lemonade was predicated upon. And that is what has created shareholder value to date, which is why this isn't some giving program that we bolt on top and we have to feel sheepish and apologetical to our shareholders about. Not at all. This is a fundamental way in which we're creating value for our shareholders.
One other way, as I mentioned, is life insurance coming in the next couple of months. How much of a driver to the bottom line, the top line, will this be?
We don't know. We don't know a lot of things before we launch them. We're very much experimentalists in our attitude. So 2 months ago, 3 months ago now, we launched pet insurance. And as you say, we're imminently going to launch life insurance, and we've already launched home insurance and condo insurance and renters insurance, and we launched in Germany, and in Holland we launched liability insurance, and we just launched in France with renters insurance. So we're doing a lot of launches. We're trying to constantly roll things out. So far, they've played pretty well. So pet insurance has been a resounding success. We've seen really strong results from pet insurance so far. I'm hopeful that life insurance will be as well, but we won't know until we've launched. We really are, as I say, experimentalists. We don't mind rolling the dice, trying things out, seeing what works, and letting the data determine what we double down on and what we put down to an experiment that failed.
Yeah, the data driving those decisions to at least test, meaning, I mean, of course, it's one huge part of the insurance business that you're not in right now, that you're obviously going to test a little bit more. But in terms of the overall landscape, and I know you've answered this question many times with other interviews, when it comes to incumbents, if they were to adopt more of the values that you have started with, to double down on their own digital user experiences, how protected is Lemonade from that, given you did start from the beginning with all of these at your core?
Um, I think I think we're I like our odds. Let me put it that way. I like our odds. Now, one of the nice things about insurance is this isn't a winner-take-all industry. It is such a stunningly big industry. You're talking about $5 trillion worldwide. That the Fortune 50 insurance carriers who are doing $100 billion a year have 3 or 4% market share. So the idea that you can be a Fortune 50 or Fortune 20 company and still only have 3 or 4% market share is just mind-boggling. But it also means that this isn't a winner-take-all. Lemonade has been doubling, and we could continue to double for many years, year on year, and we would still be a relatively small insurance company. So that is nice to know. But having said that, I actually think that the advantages that we've been able to accrue for ourselves and that have propelled us and allowed us to hit 1 million customers after 4 years when it took USAA 47 years, I think those advantages are pronounced, and I think they become more pronounced over time. So incumbents have a lot of things going for them. They've got brands that are very recognized, and they've got a lot of years of experience, and they've got dedicated teams. But frankly, I think at a structural level, they are at a disadvantage. They are strategically disadvantaged going into the 21st century because their businesses were built in the 1800s during the era of the horse-drawn carriage, and just so much in the world has changed. I've taken to saying that disruptors don't cause disruption. It's the other way around. The
Right.
disruption is what gives companies like ours an opening to come into. So it's really seismic changes that have happened in the world that have changed the world, and that ensures that the incumbents are flat-footed, wrong-footed going into the 21st century. And just about everything that they've built up over these years, whether it's their tech stack or their culture or their executives or their shareholder base, those are all the wrong tools for the kind of business transformation that is needed now.
Yeah, you're really seizing on the opportunity, and then, as you mentioned earlier, the flywheel right now with 1 million, you can capitalize on that. You can compound on that using the data that you already have to better target and design these products. I want to talk a little bit more about the pet insurance that you launched. Within just 6 months, it's now 5% of your business. What is driving the growth, do you think, of pet insurance?
Um, a few things. One is, I have to say, we just designed a beautiful product. We did everything from scratch. It was all done in-house. I'm incredibly proud of the team that did this work. We really went back to first principles thinking. We wrote a policy from scratch in plain English, half the length of traditional convoluted policies. We worked with regulators to get it approved. It has coverages that aren't always available elsewhere. We did preventative care. We did the whole, and then it was designed beautifully in the app. You've got to give it a try. If you're a pet owner, pet parent, you really want to give it a try. Go to lemonade.com, download the app, play with it, even if you're not planning to buy, just to get the experience of just how fun it can be. And we've been really thoughtful about making sure that the claims process is incredibly fast. This is a high frequency claims product. People go to the vet a lot. This is multiple times a year that you make a claim. How do you automate it? How do you make that seamless? How do you make that painless? So I really think that we've been able to go back to the drawing board and think those things through. The other thing to bear in mind is that the majority of our customers are pet parents. So you're talking about an install base, 1 million customers. A lot of them are already pet parents. They know Lemonade, they trust Lemonade. So a lot of those policies we sold without incurring any customer acquisition costs because it was an upsell to an existing customer base, which is, of course, part of that flywheel that you spoke of.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, I'd read somewhere that Great Danes are the most expensive dogs to insure. Can you confirm or verify which pets are the most expensive?
Gosh, wow. I don't know. I don't have that top of mind. Sorry. No. Great Dane sounds credible, but I couldn't tell you that for sure.
Are there pets that you don't cover?
There are. To start with, we cover cats and dogs. But if you've got a smashing parrot or some kind of a marsupial or all different other kinds of pets, we don't cover those. So we start with cats and dogs, but generally we cover your cat and your dog happily. So we do cover different ages, etc. Sure.
I'd be so curious to see the science behind how you evaluate risk on marsupials. Uh, you brought up regulation when it comes to expanding and designing products like pet insurance. I'm wondering that the hot topic for the U.S. this year is going to be cracking down on names like Facebook and Google. Is there a risk to an insurance company like yours in an age of heightened regulation risk?
Well, we're regulated, 9 ways from Sunday. So we started life as a regulated company. We grew up under the spotlight of regulators. We are regulated by the great state of New York, which has earned a global reputation as one of the most demanding regulators in the world. We're also regulated out of Holland, and the Europeans are no pushover when it comes to privacy and other things. So certainly we've been very thoughtful and careful about these things. We're not waking up late in the day to the idea of regulation. The second thing to bear in mind is we're not in the advertising business. So we do use data, but we use data to price risk. We don't use data in order to push you commercials. So I think we're on the right side of that divide where we're not using data in order to monetize you. We're using data in order to serve you, and that's an important distinction. But we are also trying to be leaders in that. I think that as a matter of fact, we are collecting data and utilizing data in a way that traditional incumbents struggle to do. And I think that, the old quote attributed to Spider-Man about with great power comes great responsibility holds true. And the idea that if we're going to be at the cutting edge of using data and machine learning in insurance, we also have to be at the cutting edge of thinking about the ethics of that. And we do work with the regulators, and I've written about this, I've spoken to regulators routinely about this, and we do try to be not only thoughtful, but to help shape what the industry should be doing in that regard.
Yeah, the ethics part of this, the charity component, certainly speaks to, again, a population of people who are more mindful about that and how their money is being allocated when they give it to a company, a business. We talked about how you've reached 1 million active users, the average age being under 35, 75% under 35, average age 33. Is there a target to go to 2 million by the end of this year? How are you looking at your goals and setting those benchmarks?
So, being a public company, we're careful about talking about forward-looking statements. So you'll excuse me if I don't answer your question directly. But let me answer it in a substantive way, which is we have an ambition to become a large company, and to do that, to become an iconic company in the 21st century. And pardon the hubris, but that is the prize at the end of the rainbow, if you like, for insurance. Because as we said earlier, insurance companies can grow to be very, very large, and they can stay that way for 100 or 200, in some cases 300 years, which is just stunning to think about. So we have set our sight on seeing whether Lemonade could become that kind of a company. Now, we haven't yet. We've got a long way to go. The race is just getting started. I do think we are in pole position. I think if you were betting on who would make it there, you'd have to take a hard look at Lemonade as a good contender. But we've just got going, and we've got many years, I think decades of rapid growth ahead of us.
And when you're targeting, new audiences, and you mentioned maybe it's not so hard to message this from a communication perspective to millennials, to Gen Zers, in past interviews you've referenced like Lulu, right? I think is it Liberty? I think, these insurance companies that have very existential commercials they put out to try to appeal to folks. I mean, when you look at your own marketing and your own messaging, are you trying to differentiate from that? I mean, what's your tactic there?
Yeah, I think Lemonade has always been something of an irreverent brand. The very name is a kind of juvenile name that people, you need a three-letter acronym, or you have to have a name with state or farm in it. Otherwise, nobody will know it's insurance. And we decided to go with Lemonade. And then we went with this bright pink, of course, when every single insurance company in the nation has either the dark red or the dark blue, these kind of very masculine, reassuring colors, and we went with this very feminine and somewhat kind of juvenile pink. So I think we've certainly zigged where they zagged, or broken in a different direction. And I think that's true throughout. How we talk about ourselves, how we think, the irreverence carries through to the impish discussions that Maya has. She's our bot. To playful things that we do in our blog posts and elsewhere. So yeah, I think Lemonade does feel different. We like that idea. We think that different is better than better. And when insurance companies like Liberty Mutual try to emulate that by launching Lulu, it kind of looks sad. You can't have a 100-year-old brand that has spent all this time building up a certain culture, then pretend to be young and hip. It just, when that happens, you move uncomfortably. You feel it's like when your parents, try to use cool words in your presence, and they're like, no, mom, dad, just don't do that. It's that kind of a dynamic, I think.
It certainly stands out. I mean, the not the interviews, the advertisements. I want to get here to a couple of last questions. The catastrophic wildfires in California, this CAT category for insurance companies. I mean, if you talk about California specifically, this is where a large base of your customers reside. It's obviously had a significant impact on the mind share of people who've been watching global destruction from climate change. You were looking at those fires also from Australia last year. I mean, when you look at climate change and you look at designing products maybe to protect people and their property from these destructive forces, what do you have in mind? How do you design that for the future?
That's a great question. And insurance does have a role to play in that. And it really runs the gamut from what coverages do you include and how do you make sure that your coverages are appropriate for the modern age. When we took a look at renters insurance policies and found that they don't cover laptops because when they were written there was no such thing, but they cover putaware, which nobody even knows what it is anymore. So you definitely want to kind of drag insurance kicking and screaming if you have to into the 21st century. But I think it even starts deeper than that. It's not just crafting coverages that matter and covering the things that really are germane to today's environment. Insurance companies in America are the second largest investors in polluting industries. There's $500 billion of premiums, of your and my premiums, being invested in coal and other industries in America. That's a stunning amount of money. Now, whether you're a home insurance company and I'm protecting you from fires, which are reaching the Q3 wildfires were the largest, most destructive wildfires in the history of California that we know of. So we're certainly seeing something like 18 or 19 of the worst years on record have happened since the year 2000. We're definitely seeing the impact of global warming. And the idea that I would take your premiums to protect you from wildfires or from floods and then invest it in the very things that are causing wildfires and floods beggars belief. It's just a nuts notion. And that's if it's home insurance. And if I'm giving you health insurance and I'm investing in the very things that cause asthma and health concerns, or life insurance and I'm investing in the very things that shorten life. So I think insurance as an industry has to do some real soul searching. Lemonade was the first and to date is the only insurance company in America that has forsworn investing any premiums in any polluting industries. But I think until insurance companies get their head around the idea that we are responsible for what we do with premiums and we can't just take money to cover these perils and then invest it in things that cause those perils, it's not self-serving for insurance companies, and it's certainly not good for the consumers whom we are meant to represent.
Yeah, it's self-destructive in many ways, and destructive overall to the climate. I'm just wondering specifically how you write for these claims as maybe they unfortunately continue to come in or even grow as more of the very unpredictable weather patterns have caused these types of destructions.
Well, first of all, you are right that we write a lot of home insurance in California and in Texas and in other places. The hurricane season, some places are exposed to wildfires and others to hurricanes, and the East Coast gets that, and southern states get the other, and there's hail in yet other places. America has a lot of natural disasters that hit different parts and different seasons. We're fairly conservative about that. So for example, fire zones in California are ranked from a 0 to a 30. We'll insure people who live in a 0 to 3, but not beyond that. We are trying to be careful. The last thing we want to do is to grow fast at the expense of really creating tail risks that would just come back and destroy our business some point in the future. So it's very important for companies of all sizes, but particularly fast-growing companies like ours, to be thoughtful about that. The second thing is we use a lot of technology in this. So for example, NASA has satellites that overfly continental US twice a day and stream back to Earth spectrometer imaging of continental US. And we've got a bot who takes feeds from the satellites and analyzes those images. So if there are wildfires, other threats that threaten our customers, we can send out notifications before, we don't learn about wildfires on CNN. We learn about it really through data streams that are automated, and everybody could be asleep, but the system will already take corrective action around that. So we do try to use technology to mitigate risks as best we can as well.
Right, and also being predictive in that to better, again, feed your models. We've talked about a variety of products already that you are either planning to launch or already have in various parts of the world. What type of product bundling capabilities might there be, and would that be beneficial to Lemonade?
Yeah, absolutely. So we already do bundling. We have discounts if you buy pet and renters insurance, you'll get a discount. And as we launch more products, we'll continue to do that. The costs of acquisition, as we said, are already, as I mentioned earlier, are much lower when you bundle, and we can pass some of those savings on to our customers, which we do.
One thing that you mentioned at the beginning of our chat today was that you had hired so many, the majority of your company now made up of people who have been hired remotely. And I know brokers are not part of your business at all. And this is not obviously your problem specifically, but I do wonder, as a technology company, when you think about getting rid of some of these jobs that, have traditionally been done by humans, now being replaced more efficiently by bots, how do you think about your role as a company that is displacing human jobs?
We tend to think about it really by being customer centric and wondering how we do the best to help consumers. Now, if humans are helpful to consumers, then that's great. That's productive work, and those jobs should survive. If humans are not being helpful, they're slowing down a process and adding cost to it, that's not the best place to deploy humans. So we use humans. We've hired a lot of people. We've created a lot of. We'll continue to do that, but we're really creating them in a way that has. We think about those humans as being surrounded by an exoskeleton of technology that allows them to do about 10 times as much as other humans can do. And we actually measure that. We've got various automation indices that we use to show that a person at Lemonade does serve about 10 times as many customers as a person at an incumbent, and does it at a higher level of customer satisfaction in a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost. So clearly that is a better model, and one that we should all militate towards. So I think we are both creating jobs, and technology does take jobs away, but we're also, as I say, hiring a lot of people. And so long as we're doing that in a way that is serving customers, getting them claims paid, if you are, I'll rephrase. If somebody is in a situation where they've been burgled, or they're being sued by their neighbor, or their house is burnt down, they don't want to think about those issues. They want to know that somebody is helping them out as quickly as humanly possible or inhumanly possible. And they want all resources deployed in order to help them. And that's really how we are focused on adding value to humanity and to our company.
And so, forward looking, who are the humans you're looking for to hire?
A lot of technologists. We're hiring a lot of technologists, but we also have a lot of humans. So the way technology works at Lemonade is processes that can be automated are, but those that can't, we want to have the most amazing humans take care of them. So for example, I mentioned earlier that a third of our claims are paid instantaneously. 2/3 have a human involved. Now it's a combination of a human and not a human, because almost all of our claims are handled by a bot initially. 97% of them are. And the bot will ask you all the questions and get your video and do an initial assessment, but then we'll pass it on to a human with a particular question. Hey, Hope made this claim, but I have this area of concern, and the humans will get involved. And so we'll really mix and match humans and technologies in a way that is seamless to you, the consumer, but behind the scenes we're multidisciplinary, whether it's people that work on regulation, or lawyers, or finance people, or customer facing, or technologists. We have them all playing in squads in a pretty integrated fashion.
All right, and last question. While I don't think anyone is happy that the events of 2020 happened the way they did, are there lessons that you will take from 2020 that will lead you and guide you in 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, we took out a full page ad on the New York Times on New Year's Day that said, get State Farm, get Progressive, get Lemonade, get whomever. It's much more important to get insured than who you get insurance with. And really, that's one of the big lessons of 2020 is anything can happen. The unpredictable can happen, devastation can happen, and therefore being covered is so important. We do think that getting covered by Lemonade is better than getting covered by other people, but getting covered by somebody is much, much better than getting covered by nobody. So I think one of the big lessons for us, and I hope for all of us, is unexpected happens, tail events happen, black swans exist. And if we don't prepare for them or think about them, then that can really, really be devastating. So the importance of those safety nets is, I think, more pronounced today than ever it was. And hopefully Lemonade can play a role in providing that safety net for the betterment of everybody.
It makes a lot of sense. Daniel Schreiber, thank you so much for joining us. We'll check in with you on that Great Dane question later on. Have a great rest of your year, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Hope. Have a great 2021.
Excellent. Awesome.